It's time to draft for fantasy football. Sometimes the problem isn't not knowing who you want, it's that you want them all, right? There's too many players you love this year. You got to have them, but you can't get them all. So let's simplify things for you. These are our top 10 must haves for 2025. All right, so we're going to take turns here, but right off the bat, Chris, I think you're cheating. You're picking two players.
I am actually. So look, you guys get more than 10 players. So hey, be happy about it. But I'm gonna combine Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins together for this simple fact is because anytime I'm in the back half of round one, meaning like pick 7 or later, in any kind of PPR league, half PPR, full PPR, these are the guys I absolutely want to draft in here, and it's really hard for me to like say one significantly over the other because I could see either of these guys being the highest scoring wide receiver this year. You look at it last year, Malik Neighbors had 170 targets, which was only 9 less than Jamar Chase despite playing 2 less games. Look at Nico Collins. Okay, he only had 99 targets. But if you take out the 3 games where he played less than half the snaps because he left with injury or he wasn't fully healthy yet, he was on pace for 160 targets. So both these guys are going to get tons of targets. But also, these are both stud wide receivers. Look at it last year. Neighbors, 75% success rate versus man, 76% versus press, and 80% versus zone. Nico finished in the 93rd percentile versus man, 96th percentile versus press, and also posted a very strong 81% success rate versus zone coverage. And we both love Matt Harmon, reception perception, the work he does there. You look at their route trees, it's basically all green for these guys. They can run the entire route tree. But what I really love about both of them this year is the situation because both of these guys are pretty much their entire team's offense. Last year, Neighbors was first in target share and second in target rate among all wide receivers. And when you look at Nico Collins, when he was on the field last year, he accounted for 44% of his team's receiving yards and 40% of their touchdowns. And I actually think both of them are in better situations this year. Last year, Neighbors was fifth in deep targets, yet he had the 82nd lowest yards per reception because none of the QBs he had could actually throw a deep ball. Russell Wilson finished second in deep ball accuracy last year. And then you look at Nico Collins. Yes, he's got 2 wide receivers there and Christian Kirk, but there's 2 rookie wide receivers that are probably going to need time. And look, I like Christian Kirk, but let's not act like Christian Kirk is an elite wide receiver who's going to command a ton of volume. Probably not even going to get the target share Stephon Diggs was getting last year to start the season. Not to mention, when you look at this Texans offense, they might struggle with the run game with Mixon banged up, Nick Chubb there, Woody Marks, the rookie. They might not be able to run the ball. This is a team that was 12th and 11th in pass attempts per game the last 2 years. I think that number is going up too. So I think both Malik Neighbors and Nico Collins are ready to smash this year. Again, Malik Neighbors, my only worry is that toe. Maybe it affects him at some point this year, but right now it doesn't sound like an issue. Nico Collins, fully healthy, good to go. Give me either of these guys in the back half of round one. I think either of these guys will carry your teams to a championship this year.
All right, so my first must-have is a guy I've already talked about as a league winner. So I've got to have Drake London wherever possible. And the best thing is you might not even need to spend a first-round pick on him. He usually goes early in the second round. Just imagine now, especially after I get done convincing you that you must have Drake London, if you could get like Malik Neighbors and Drake London to start. Well, look, if you have to wait till the end of the first round to make your pick, you've got a lot of great options there. Now, if you want to go RB, fine. I'm not going to tell you you don't want to take a guy like Derrick Henry or CMC or Achan or whatever. Fine. But if you're going receiver, you're like, okay, well, I got Puka Nakua, I got Amon-Ra St. Brown, I got, Drake London, BTJ. I feel best about Drake London out of all of that group, and I'll tell you why. I have zero concerns with Drake London here. I have slight concerns with the others. Puka, I mean, besides the injuries from last year, he's got a quarterback who's almost 40 years old and has a bad back. It could be a problem at some point. Not saying I'm not drafting him. I'm just saying it could be. Amon-Ra St. Brown, totally safe, totally high ceiling. Okay, what is his ceiling? Have we already seen his ceiling? And the thing is, got a new offensive coordinator, Jameson Williams stepping up a little bit. Maybe he's just a little bit more of a high floor play. All right, BTJ, great rookie season, but remember, most of his damage came late in the season when Christian Kirk was done, not even there. There really wasn't target competition. And now I got Travis Hunter. They also have a new OC. So Drake London, I feel better about him than last year because he's actually going to have a quarterback who can get him the ball, unlike Kirk Cousins last year, who just struggled all last year. And we already know what Michael Penix Jr. did when Drake London was with him on the field. He only had eyes for London. All right. He loves to throw to the outside. He doesn't check the ball down like at all. He's not looking for the easy pass. He's looking for Drake London. And you always want to target a receiver that has little competition. And I'm telling you, there's almost none. It's kind of hard to believe, really, the Falcons didn't do more in the offseason to address receiver because, yeah, they needed to patch up that defense. But now Darnell Mooney is out, and they're saying they're not even sure when he's going to play. I think the coach said sometime this season. So who is Drake London's target competition? Let me see. Daryl Hodge, Ray McLeod. Last year, London already was third in targets, also third in first read targets. I can see him finishing first. I mean, honestly, who else is getting the ball here in this offense? So, needless to say, I think he has a sky high ceiling. And if I can get him, end of the first round, beginning of the second round, even better, I'm just going to do it every time. All right, all the must haves aren't going to be first, second rounders, right? Let's get a little bit farther into the draft. Who's another guy you're going to tap over and over?
My next must-have is Calvin Ridley. I've talked about Calvin Ridley a ton, but in case you missed it, I'm going to talk about Calvin Ridley again here. Look, despite having to play with Mason Rudolph and Will Levis last year, still went over 1,000 receiving yards. But he had the most unrealized air yards of any player last year. He had over 1,000 unrealized air yards last year. And if you don't know what unrealized air yards, that's basically the yards that ball traveled in the air that did not result in a completion. So literally the ball was thrown another 1,000 yards to him, didn't result in a completion. Why? Because his catchable target rate ranked 97th among all wide receivers. 97th! That means 96 wide receivers had more catchable targets than Calvin Ridley last year. Basically, none of his targets were catchable, or hardly any of his targets were catchable. What I really love about him this year, he had the third most deep targets last year and the fifth highest ADOT. And that is going to be perfect for this matchup with Cam Ward, who not only loves to throw the deep ball, but is very good at throwing the deep ball. If you look at the first preseason game for Cam Ward, 63% of his attempts traveled 10 or more yards in the air, which led all QBs in the preseason in week one. He also had the seventh highest air yards per attempt, and 80% of his completions gained 10 or more yards. He's not a guy who's going to take the easy check down. He's going to throw the ball down the field. Kind of like what I said about Jaden Daniels last year with Terry McLaurin. Oh, and by the way, in that preseason game, did you happen to notice what Calvin Ridley did? He got 3 of Cam Ward's 8 targets and caught all of them for 50 yards. Now, I know it's preseason. We don't want to overreact to preseason, but this is what we're going to see. We're going to see Cam Ward and Calvin Ridley hit on a ton of deep targets this year, like we saw with Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin last year. And look, Calvin Ridley is far from dust. I know he's getting up there in age, but you look at it last year, he had a 75% success rate versus man, 78% versus press, and 79% versus zone. Sure, he's not an elite wide receiver like he was back in, Atlanta before he decided to go gamble or anything, but he's still a very good wide receiver. And like you said with Drake London, who is taking targets away from him in this offense? Nobody. He's going to get a ton of targets. He's going to get a ton of deep targets, and he's actually going to catch those deep targets this year. So Calvin Ridley, a guy I've drafted, one of my highest drafted players in Underdog, and he's going to be one of my highest drafted players in redraft too.
All right, so let me rewind a bit to my first player when I was talking about those early wide receivers, Amon-Ra St. Brown. Look, he's fine. There's nothing wrong with him. It'll be probably kind of the same this year, but I did also mention Jameson Williams taking a step forward because I think Jameson Williams is taking a big step forward, and so he's one of my must-haves. Now, I don't think they're going to completely overhaul this offense just because Ben Johnson's gone. It's not like he's been there forever. They're going to have one of his disciples take over and do a lot of the same thing. Okay, but this is more about the player himself. Jameson Williams last year was kind of like his first full year because he had dealt with, remember, injuries, suspensions, right? All this stuff that just kept getting in the way of him being an NFL wide receiver. And we saw last year, he finally got serious. He put all that behind him, and he had what you would call his breakout season. But I don't think it was his best season. I think it's going to be this year because he is still learning. He is still growing, right? He's going to be a more integral part of this offense. And even though the Sun God is still the number one receiver there, and that is a lot of target competition, there really isn't a whole lot behind him. I do still think they're going to feature Jameson Williams more and not just as a deep threat, which is funny because, when you think of JMO, you think of that deep ball, right? He's a guy who's just going to, run the go route and they're going to hit him deep, when everyone else is distracted underneath. But that's actually not what led to his success last year. In fact, it's kind of funny talking about reception perception, and Matt Harmon really, really analyzed Jameson Williams a lot this offseason. Out of all of his route tree, the nine, that go route, where basically just run straight and run deep, that was the only one where he registered a red on. That was his worst route. He's not good at just running straight in a line and going deep. He's good at everything else, basically. And they started to use him in a lot more versatile ways. And that's why he had his breakout season, because he wasn't just a decoy. He wasn't just that deep threat. And they're going to continue to do that. I think he's going to become more of a complete receiver this year. And we'll see it, as far as the results. He was really good against zone. And so they can utilize him that way. He could get better against man and press. And, that's the next step he needs to take. We'll see if he does it. But either way, this is a great offense. This is a guy who, as far as big play, big output that you want in fantasy, he was top 10 in 20-plus yard catches. He was top 25 in yards per route run, both very telling stats that can lead to success in fantasy. And so in the range where he's being drafted, I find myself going back to JMO time and time again. Ryan, you're going back to Tennessee again.
I am. It's kind of crazy. It's like, wait, am I really this high on Tennessee? But I just think Tony Pollard is just too good of a value this year to pass up on. This is another guy, one of my highest drafted players in underdog drafts. You look at it last year, he was 9th among all running backs in weighted opportunity share, and snaps. He had the 8th most carries of all running backs and the 9th most targets. He ran the 13th most routes of any running back. He had the 12th highest target share of any running back. Had the 15th highest expected fantasy points per game of all running backs, yet he somehow underachieved by 3. I mean, I know how he underachieved by 3. He had to play with Mason Rudolph and Will Levis, and no team was scared of the running game, and they couldn't score any touchdowns. In fact, he finished 22nd among all running backs in red zone touches. But again, with Cam Ward, we're probably going to see more red zone touches here for everybody in this offense, including Tony Pollard. But let's keep going. It's not just, all the volume. He's also an explosive runner. He ranked 8th in runs of over 15 yards last year and 15th in explosive rating. And look, many people coming into this year, I heard a lot of people talking like, oh, it's going to be a 50-50. I heard a lot of people saying that last year too. Oh, they're going to want Tyjae Spears more involved. No, they're not. I mean, look, I know Tyjae Spears got hurt, but look at what was happening in that game prior to the Spears injury. In the game before Spears got hurt, Pollard had a 79% snap share, a 67% rush share, and a 75% route participation. Not only that, he got 2 carries inside the 5-yard line. It was all Tony Pollard again. And I don't care when Tyjae Spears is going to be healthy. Stop kidding yourself. It's going to be all Tony Pollard. Brian Callahan said all the same nonsense last year. Yeah, we want these guys to, be in a 50-50. No, it was not a 50-50. It was all Pollard. Now what is he saying? All the same nonsense this year. And what do we see in preseason? Hardly any Tyjae Spears. Tyjae Spears is just a change of pace back. This is Pollard's backfield. It's going to be a better offense, more chances to score, and he's a good player. And he goes as the running back 26 in your fantasy drafts. That is literally Tony Pollard's floor this year. The only way he doesn't do this is if he gets hurt. His ceiling is much higher. I'm drafting Tony Pollard every time at that ADP.
All right, so I'm going to pull a page out of your playbook. I got 2 players now that I also feel if you're waiting for that RB2 when you get to round 5, 6, or, in that range, all right, you want upside. I agree, Tony Pollard's got it, and so do these rookie running backs. I would be totally happy to get either TreVeyon Henderson or RJ Harvey, but I want to make sure I leave my draft with at least one of them, somehow, some way. All right, even if I already have 2 running backs, if one of them is still there, I'm going to grab one because these guys each could be league winners. And so for various reasons, we already know. And I feel like now everybody's jumping on the Henderson bandwagon because we saw that preseason highlight, because now everyone's figuring out, oh, wait, maybe he's going to be the main running back in New England, not Ramondre Stevenson, who was horribly inefficient last year and fumbled every time he got the ball. Yeah, that's a little late to the party here. Henderson is going to be a guy who basically is the lead back early in the season. We're not going to have to wait, I don't think, at all. And this is a run-heavy offense. It's Mike Vrabel again. It's going to be probably more boring than we want, but that's good for the run game. Henderson is a guy who also will catch a ton of passes out of the backfield. He didn't have to do a lot, in Ohio State because they had another good running back who may not be in the NFL, but they have a lot of competition there, and this guy just scratched the surface of what he can do. And then RJ Harvey, the same thing. I probably have talked way too much about him this preseason, but let me keep going. RJ Harvey, a natural pass catcher. He is that joker that Sean Payton was wanting. He targeted him in the draft. He already has proclaimed it out loud. He's the guy. He's the guy, right? They didn't have any guys last year in the backfield who did anything of note in Denver, and now it's going to be all RJ Harvey. He's going to get a ton of touches. This is a good offense already. So, look, I was a little skeptical. I was very skeptical of Denver and Sean Payton's offense last year. No more, and now I'm 1,000% in on Harvey. So again, you probably can't get both of these players. If you can somehow, congrats on your championship. But even if you just get one of them, you've taken a big step. All right, but there's still good running back value to be found here. Some guys that are maybe being a little bit overlooked, but you want to come away with them in your drafts if possible.
I want to come away with Jordan Mason in my drafts if possible every time I can. Reports out of camp is that we're going to see a relatively equal workload split, but the real report out of camps that I love is the fact that it sounds like Jordan Mason is going to, at a minimum, be the goal line back. In fact, head coach Kevin O'Connell recently said, and I quote, "I do think Jordan's going to bring something to the table in those short yardage situations, those goal line situations, goal to goal, where we've really left a lot to be desired as a football team." And it makes sense, because look at Aaron Jones last year inside the 5-yard line. He had 13 attempts for -2 yards and a lost fumble. Like, that is not getting it done by any means, and it's obvious why they brought Jordan Mason in, because it's like, we need to score touchdowns, not go backwards when we're at the goal line. Mason's a 223-pound running back, so he could certainly handle that goal line role, but I think Mason's role could be even bigger, because you look at it last year, Mason ranked 5th in missed tackle rate, 2nd in after contact rate, and 2nd in explosive run rate. Aaron Jones, he was 27th, 11th, and 27th in those categories. Now look, all credit to Aaron Jones. He's still a fairly productive running back into his 30s now. But Jordan Mason brings something to this offense that Aaron Jones doesn't have on that short yardage, that early down, that goal line stuff. And I think we're going to see Jordan Mason potentially be the early down goal line back, with Aaron Jones more of the change of pace pass catching back this year. And where you're getting Jordan Mason, kind of looking at him as like a discount David Montgomery, a guy who could score a touchdown on any given week, but still gives you enough in the rest of the game where he's not just touchdown dependent. And you're getting this guy a round and a half, 2 rounds after David Montgomery. So for me, Jordan Mason is that type of late round guy who could score 10 plus touchdowns this year that you get at a discount. I'm taking that every time.
Well, another veteran running back that kind of gets overlooked, maybe forgotten a lot of times, is DeAndre Swift. And I know a lot of this hinges on whether you think Chicago's offense will actually do anything this year. But look, there's obviously reasons to be optimistic here. The coaching staff is gone, right? We all celebrated that. Get rid of all the old and in with the new. Ben Johnson, obviously an offensive mastermind. And it just so happens that he's reunited with DeAndre Swift. So Swift last year, under that regime, had his career worst 3.8 yards per carry. I mean, he just flat out wasn't good, right? And it wasn't just him. It was basically the whole offense. It wasn't just his fault, though. I think we can all definitely admit that. Well, last time he was with Ben Johnson in Detroit before he moved to Philly and then moved to Chicago, just so happened that year that he had his career best 5.5 yards per carry. Now, I understand, different situation, different club, different everything, right? But Ben Johnson has kept DeAndre Swift as his RB1. They didn't draft a running back till like the last round. They didn't replace him in free agency. They have DeAndre Swift there in place as the lead back for a much improved team, and not just the coaching staff that's improved. This offensive line, PFF declared it the most improved offensive line, and they didn't just say that. They have them ranked 4th heading into the season as the 4th best offensive line in the entire NFL. If their offensive line is going to be that good, they're going to be able to run the ball a lot better. And Swift, we know, is a natural pass catcher. He's a guy who will get a ton of receptions. I mean, maybe it's a little hyperbolic to say maybe this is like your discount CMC. But at the very least, this is a guy who's going to kind of do it all for an offense that should be much better. And you can get him in like round 8, sometimes even round 9, if people just aren't that excited about him. I'll take that discount as much as possible. All right, not just running backs and receivers here. Let's hit them up with a couple of each position at quarterback and tight end. You got a quarterback in mind?
I do, and I've talked a ton about Justin Fields, but he's a guy like I just feel like okay, sure, nothing wrong with taking Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, Jaden Daniels, Jalen Hurts. So those guys are great. I'm not here to tell you like don't draft those guys. No, draft them. They're great. But only 4 people in your league can get those guys. There's only 4 of them, so chances are you may not be one of those 4. And if you're not, Justin Fields is the guy I am targeting, usually in the 10th round of fantasy drafts. Look at it back in his 2 years in Chicago. He was the QB9 and the QB5 in points per game. And you know what his best numbers were those 2 years passing? 2,562 passing yards and 17 touchdowns. And he didn't even do that in the same year. Like, it wasn't like he had a career. No, he didn't even have his highest touchdown total and his highest yardage total in the same year. And he was still a top 10 quarterback each of those years in points per game. This is the power of your rushing quarterback in your 4-point passing touchdown leagues. Now, I will say if you're in a 6-point passing touchdown leagues, that does lower Justin Fields a bit. But most people still play in 4-point passing touchdowns, and that rushing upside is a cheat code. And look, if the preseason game was any indication, his toe is just fine because we saw him run in that, 15-yard touchdown. He looked just fine on it, so I'm not worried about the toe here. And this is a guy who's averaged 61 rushing yards per game as a starter and half a rushing touchdown per game. That's a 17-game pace of 1,000 rushing yards and 8 rushing touchdowns. But even if he gives you 700 rushing yards, 7 rushing touchdowns, that's going to be enough because, again, go back to those years in Chicago. He had a year where he was a QB9 in points per game. He only had 5 rushing touchdowns and 600 rushing yards that year. He can still be a top 10 QB, even if he doesn't go off the charts crazy rushing the ball, even if he doesn't throw for 3,500 yards, 25 plus touchdowns. But if he does go off the charts rushing the football, and if he somehow does throw for 3,000 yards, 25 touchdowns, he could be a top 5 QB that you got at a major discount this year. Look, upside wins championships. You can take one of those boring, safe guys who give you like an 18-point floor every single week, or you could go with a quarterback who can absolutely win you week after week with that rushing upside. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take Justin Fields.
And as far as tight end, trying to get over the fact that I just keep going back to TJ Hawkinson. My gut just won't let me do that. I just feel like this is going to be Hawk's best season, but I have some data to back that up too. Look, so Hawkinson, since moving to Minnesota, it's been kind of like an incomplete career so far because he's missed 9 games the last 2 seasons. Had, of course, a torn ACL coming back from it last year. We told you over and over again, as much as possible, not to draft Hawkinson. And even when he was going to come back, we basically said don't bother spending up your number 1 pick or all your fab to get him. He probably won't be worth it, and he really wasn't worth it. All right. So now this year, it's different because he is recovered, right? Remember, he waited till January 29th to have that ACL surgery because they had to wait for the MCL to heal. So he wasn't even close to a full year removed from that surgery. Of course, he wasn't going to be healthy. He probably rushed it back. And this year, it's going to be all systems go. Look, he actually, before that happened in 2023, could have had his first 1,000-yard season, his first full season in Minnesota, if not for the late season injury. Why not this year? This year, he could hit 1,000 yards, he could hit 10 touchdowns. And the fact that I'm a little, let's say, skeptical on J.J. McCarthy being an elite quarterback actually makes me feel better about Hawkinson because a lot of times, young and experienced quarterbacks, they will rely on their safety blanket, the big tight end that's right there across the middle of the field. Look, I'm not worried about Justin Jefferson. I'm not saying that. But let's face it, TJ Hawkinson is going to be one of McCarthy's preferred targets. And I think he's definitely going to have a bounce back season. You don't have to spend up early to get a tight end like Bowers or McBride. You know what? You can wait till the middle rounds and settle for a guy like Hawkinson and still come away with a top 5 tight end. And that's what I just find myself doing over and over again. All right, those are 10 must-have players, technically 12, but that's okay. Look, we've got a lot more for you. Draft strategy, sleepers, everything you need to win in fantasy. It's right here.